Adam Maxhabero El Matach Dvar Halacha, and we started explaining what is the spiritual level or the spiritual source for Yipter Adam Maxhabero. How does that take place? That takes place because above there's an idea of Yipter Adam Maxhabero. In Oil Masal Yoinim, there is the Adam, which is Adam Elyon Chavero, is called the Jewish people Knesset Yisrael. And there's the separation that takes place through the tzimtzum, that even though the Yidden are mushrish very high above, but there's the level of the tzimtzum harishon that the Frierdiker Rebbe explains over there in his Maimer, also titled Al Yipater Adam Chavera El Matoich Dvar Halacha. Now, this tzimtzum harishon we started explaining that it's, first of all, it's unique and different than all the other tzimtzumim because it was b'derech siluk. It was b'derech that the oil completely left the original source and so on, the original place, and no lessening of the light. It completely disappeared to allow for the light of the Bligvul to come about. And here we started explaining a very interesting point. The power of Gvul, the power of limitation, was there always as part of the Shleimus of Hashem, even when the oil in Safa Bligvul shone. But it was not recognizable. Only once there was the level of the Tzimtzum Harishon, so then instead of the power of Bligvul being ascendant and in control, and the power of Gvul was something that was subsumed in that, now it's the other way around. That the power of Gvul is something that appears, and then the Oid HaBligvul, the infinite light of Hashem from before the Tzimtzum, now goes through, and it's like grasped and encompassed by the Koyach HaGvul. Now we're going to start giving names and levels identifying what this Koyach HaGvul is after the Tzimtzum. So that's what he's starting to say in line 9, what the Koyach HaGvul is that affects this type of transition and now encompassing of the Bligvul in the Gvul. So he says, line 9, Nifel Inazeh, this matter is affected Reshimu Koyach HaGvul, through the Reshimu, the power of Gvul. It says when it speaks about that Hashem was Mesalik as Oirei HaGadol, that he removed his great light. So he says, V'nishar Reshimu, an impression, a mark, remained afterwards. That impression, that mark, is the latent and dormant power of Gvul that was beforehand hidden in the Oirei HaBligvul, that appeared now in the empty space. That's known as Reshimu. And then afterwards, V'achar kach aidei hakav, and after the Reshimu appeared, so now there's drawing down the line. Now where did the line come from? The Reshimu, we said, is the Koyach HaGvul that now appeared, the power of Gvul that now appeared once you move the Oil Nisaf on the side. The Kavbat is a continuation. It's drawn down from that level of revelation, the power of the Bligvul. So what you have over here is the combining of Kav and Reshimu, which is the combining of Bligvul going into Gvul. As we'll soon say, that Kav has to do with the Oiris and Reshimu has to do with the Kalim. So we see that the Bligvul, which is the source of the Oiris, is coming into the Kalim, which comes from Gvul. So he says in line 12, which in Mavur about Maimer, like to explain the Maimer, that the coming into being of the Kalim and the Kalim of the Spheres, that their root is from the level of Reshimu. In other words, the Reshimu is that power of Gvul, and the Kalim is a further extension and expansion of that power of Gvul. But how is it actually brought into being? Hu min ha'oir, oir hakav. it actually appears and is brought into being through the line of the kav, the misavus ha'or nasa kli. It's brought down in Chassidus and Kabbalah that when the lights from which the vessels are made, and the light that of the kav and the light that comes into the vessels, when they become coarsened and thickened, so then from that comes about the vessel. So it's very important to remember this. The shoyrish of the keli is from the reshimu, but the reshimu by itself is dark and cannot make anything. The actual creation and bringing forth of the kelim comes from the oir hakav, comes from the oiris, because oir is gilui, so it can make, and it makes the kelim. And because the keli is actually brought into being from the coarsening, from the thickening of the vessel, of the oir, so that ensures that the keli is now comparable and on a level where it can join with the oir, so should be able to receive and accept within it the light and the revelation. In other words, if there would have been some other method of bringing the kelim into being from the reshimu, so then the oir and the keli would not necessarily be able to work together. Since the purpose, as he's about to say, of the keli is to receive within it the oir and gilui and work together with it, so it was necessary that even though its shoyrish is from the reshimu, that it comes about from the oir. The goal and purpose of the keli is not to be something independent, but to receive within it the oir and revelation. And to be able to affect that the keli should be able to receive within them the oir, tzrichim lifel ba'oiris u'b'kelim. We have to affect both in the oiris and the kelim, sheyiu shneim heipech tivam, that both of them should go against their nature. Both of them should be in such a way where their nature is subsumed for the higher purpose. What is their nature that they're going against? The teva, or the nature of light, is lalis lamayla v'loilis labish b'kli, to go upwards and not to become enclosed in a vessel, similar to fire that only wants to go upwards. It doesn't want to be down here. V'teva kelim ulahalim b'lahaser v'loilegalas. And on the opposite side, the nature of the vessels is to conceal and cover over and not to reveal. And we need to now affect that the oir should be willing to come down and that the keli should want to reveal. Therefore, we have to affect in both of them. Both in the light and in the vessel. It should be the opposite of their nature. Through this, through this becomes the joining of both things together, the oir and keli. So this is all the process of what the tzimtzum was meant to accomplish. We said yesterday that the tzimtzum was not for the sake of just constriction, that it should be hidden, but rather the purpose of the tzimtzum is so that there should be revelation. So we explained now that whole process, that now the power of Gvul becomes revealed, and the Kelim becomes revealed, and the Oiris can come down to the Kelim through the Kav, and the Kav from the Rishimu. This is all to be able to bring about revelation. But it started off with Tzimtzum, and a powerful Tzimtzum, Tzimtzum B'derech Siluk. So top of page Yud Aleph, 7th page, Ois Dalet, Omnam, Af Shalachar Tzimtzum Nishal Rishimu, V'achar Kach Nimshach HaKav. Even though after the Tzimtzum there remained in the empty space that appeared the impression, which is the Koyach HaGvul, and afterwards came down the line of light in that empty space. The way the Kav came down was in such a way that the Oir should come down and clothed in the vessels. They should be joined together. Still in all, it's still prefaced and predicated on a tzimtzum. It's still in such a manner that a man is leaving his fellow. It's still about tzimtzum. It's still about the light leaving. When we talk externally looking at it, and we're looking at the feeling and the perception of the one looking like on the receiving end, in other words, Nivraim, there's now an existence that is not Hashem, which before the Tzimtzum, there was no possibility for that. So now, even though the purpose of the Tzimtzum was to create a revelation, etc., but it's still Yipatr ad Mechavere. It's still, there is a going, a leave-taking one of another. Especially according to what's explained in the Mamar, prior to this mimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that he says over there, that in the beginning, Elokim created the heavens and the earth. Torah itself, which is the Torah of truth, says that the world actually exists. It's not an imaginary thing. It's not what's called an achizas einayim. It's a reality. So if it's a reality, that means there is a place that from our perspective, Hashem left. There's Yipater Adam Charvede. Therefore, there's a need for a particular advice and counsel to be able to reach the goal and the purpose, that for that goal and purpose was the entire Seder Ishtalshlus, Hachal Ma'at Tzimtzum, beginning from the Tzimtzum. So we need to undo, or we need to do a preventative measure, or a healing measure for this leave-taking that the Tzimtzum created. And that's what he says in line 13, while you potter el matach dvar halacha, that's what it says. Do not take leave only out of a matter of halacha. Shebachlalu, so when you're not Torah in general, that's the idea of Torah. Shayada nifla inin da halichas olam loy. We know that through Torah and halachas, it affects that the traveling of the world is to him. What's it mean, the traveling of the world is to him? It's the drawing down of Hashem's essence down here below. Meaning, just like we said in the simple sense, that even though there might be a separation in location geographically between a person and his friend, through sharing a dvar halacha, so then the leave-taking is only external, but in truth, they are bound up together by that dvar halacha, the same thing. In the leave-taking that takes place through the Tzimtzum Rishon, even though there seems to be externally that they are separated, that godliness is not visible, that there's a metzias of world and existence, through Torah, Halichas Olam Lo, Hashem travels down here below. Hashem's essence from before the Tzimtzum comes here to connect with us over here. So now the Rebbe is going to ask, that's, if so, something that's in common with Torah in general. Why do we say specifically halacha? Line 17, l'achri called birzeh, but after this entire explanation, we still have to understand the exact language. Do not take leave. Only out of a matter of halacha. The lechura, seemingly, according to what was explained previously, we can affect this matter through every topic in Torah. Since the entire Torah is rooted in Hashem's essence. What is the need specifically of a matter of halacha specifically? Why halacha? So he says a nice hey. This will be understood by first prefacing what's known, the Indian Zechroinus de Rosh Hashanah, concerning the concept that on Rosh Hashanah we have a matter of Zechroinus, remembrances. Chazal say, Imru lefani beRosh Hashanah chulu, say before me on Rosh Hashanah, different psukim. And we have to say a series of psukim of Zechroinus, of remembrance, so that your memory should come up before me. Hashem says that the memory of the Yidden should come up before me for good. And the memory of the Yidden coming up for good before Hashem, we bring proof from the Torah that Hashem remembers. That is the 10 different psukim of Zechroinus, of remembrance that we're bringing from the Torah, top of the 8th page of the Maimer. And we say, you remember the actions of the world, or the making of the world, and you recall and remember all those formed early on. So Chassidus explains there's a difference in Maaseh Olam and Yitzuri Kedem. Maaseh Olam, the actions in the creation of the world, Koyal Kol Seder Ishtalshus, the Olam HaNetzel, Olam HaNivra. The word Olam is referring to either the worlds that are created or the worlds that were even formed, in other words, all the way up to Atzilus. The Yitzuri Kedem, where it says that things that are formed early, meaning higher than Seder Ishtalshus, they are referring to the worlds that are prior to and higher than the world of Atzilus. That for all of them we need to have the remembrance and the commemoration and recalling on Rosh Hashanah. This is also that we mention in the tefillah over there. And we bring psukim that also Noach with love you remembered. The remembrance of Noach with love is also the making of the covenant of the bris with Noach, that he will not destroy the world. And we conclude Zoicher HaBris. So we see that the remembrance has to do with the covenant. And the conclusion of Zoicher HaBris has to do with the Koyal Krisis HaBris, the Avram, it has to do with the making of the covenant that Hashem made with Avraham Avinu, that's mentioned in this parsha. And also the Zoicher HaBris indicates Val Krisis HaBris the Moshe Rabbeinu, also the making of the covenant with Moshe Rabbeinu. So first he's going to explain what is the concept of a bris, of a Krisis bris, through a covenant, through cutting an animal in two, and then he's going to explain the Noach, Avraham, and Moshe's bris. The idea behind this is line 11, the content of the making the covenant is understood. When you examine the actual act of making a covenant the way it was done in those days. We divide and cut one matter, in that case an animal, to two halves, and you pass through between its parts. This is an indication and a sign that indicates just like these two parts are really essentially one thing, even though it seems to be two parts. So too these two that are passing between these parts are really one item. Even more in depth, the effect of making the covenant is that we're passing through the parts. Even though that could be that externally one should become distant from the other. Despite their physical external distance, it'll remain the memory of the union that's there to be found in the inner matter. And we see this in the actual cutting of the animal in two parts. Just like the item that was cut into two parts. That initially they were one. Internally, spiritually, they're two halves of the same animal, despite the fact that you cut them in half. And this unity and oneness, that is an internal unity and oneness, will be drawn down and affect also the external. to negate the effect on those things that are causing separation, that it should undo the separation. The inner aspect should affect and influence the outer aspect, that even that which wants to lead to a dissolving of the union, the external aspect should be joined together. In a simple sense, when you make a treaty, it means even though two people might separate, two countries might separate, and they might go on divergent paths, and there might be things that might lead them to disregard each other, the idea of the treaty and the covenant is we promised each other we're going to be connected with each other despite our differences. So even when there are differences, even then when there is an external separation, the internal union will influence the externality to be united together. This means the idea of making a covenant is lakasher as ha'ichush b'pnimius im chitzonius in top of page Yud Gimel to connect and bind together the union that's to be found in the inner aspect with the external aspect of the matter. Sheyumshach v'yifal gam b'chitzonius to come down and influence also the external. And now the Rebbe is going to talk about the three krisis bristen of Noach, Avram, and Moshe. And more specifically, there's three components. Krisis bris the Noach's covenant, Avram's covenant, or the Moshe. In Yesh Zikaron, there is memory, there's memory. There's two types of remembrances, or different types of remembrances. Yesh Zikaron b'chitzonius, there is an external remembrance. Yesh Zikaron b'pnimius, and there is an internal remembrance. Zikarim b'chitzonius, an external remembrance, klalusei shayich b'inyanim chitzoniim, inyanim gashvim. Its general thing is connected and associated with external matters, physical matters. Shagam ha'hefsik b'neiim hu b'inyanim gashvim. That also the separation between them is in physical matters. Hefsik gashmi, a physical separation, b'makim b'zman, either in location or in time. So when there's a physical separation, we are undoing that physical separation, that the physical should not be separated. To even higher in the general idea of the chain order of descent, the way it was established with a certain arranged order. Its root above is from the external union of Chachma Binam, like was explained in a previous mimer that year from the Rebbe, that between the 25th of El of Rosh Hashanah, that in Rosh Hashanah that day was the creation of Adam Arishon, that through Adam Arishon's creation, so there was an inner union of Chachma Bina instead of the outer union, the external union of Chachma Bina that's necessary for the existence of the world to go on. He goes on line 15, Val Zikaron b'chitzonius. Shehu as a Karan al Seder Ishtalshus Shenimshach Miyichut Chitzoni the Chachma Bina, on this external remembrance. That's the remembrance of Seder Ishtalshus that comes out from the external union of Chachma Bina. In other words, that the world should externally and physically go on. That was the covenant for Noach, that Hashem promised Noach, I won't destroy the world. The idea is that it should be the ongoing existence of the general Seder Ishtalshalos. That's the external union, that's the external bris, that throughout the entire days of the world will not cease to be.